but that's how this team rolls. Great. So I am recording now. Just check that I am. Welcome to Show and Tell 4 for Waste Exemptions Alpha. Just as an extra aside, the way our team rolls, you probably noticed we like to have a dog at the end of our slides. We've also somehow inadvertently hiding celebrity Easter eggs, celebrities, a picture of a celebrity. And so the next slide, our team slide, will have a celebrity, and you have a few seconds. If you recognize the person, by all means send us the message. But anyway, next slide, please, Thomas. Team is unchanged to the left. We're working closely with Geraint and John Willington. We'll as much time as we can with them because they're very busy anyway. Geraint you'll hear from later on in this session. Our core collaborators continue to collaborate with us. Added Marvin onto this one. He's always a big support. We've been speaking to him more. We spoke to him a lot in Discovery, and we've dragged him back into the mix again for Alpha. So that's really good. If anybody hasn't spotted, then it's our Adam Ellison, who looks just like Joe Wicks, fitness expert. So that's the answer to that one if you didn't get it. Right, next slide, please. Okay, our standard one really, and we break this rule every time, but try and we're going to try and compact everything we've been doing in the last 2 weeks, how we've done it, what we've learned, and what we're going to be doing next, and then hopefully group some questions in at the end. By all means, fire questions our way at any point. Happy to capture them, but yeah, we'll try and stick to the rules. Promise this time that we're around that 20-25 minute mark, so you've got plenty of time for questions or to escape early if there aren't any questions. Next slide, please, Thomas. Thank you. Yeah, as you'll see, this little arrow moves along a bit further. As regards to the main alpha, which we're focusing on around waste exemptions, we're almost at that halfway point. Might be difficult to read where the blobs that sit underneath where we'll be looking at and what you're going to learn about now in this session, but we're certainly immersed in this area of user research into the current waste exemptions process and systems. User research stuff is ramping up from internal to external, more on this later, but hopefully you can see where we are. Our sprints are fortnightly, so another 2 months, I'd say, from this point. But anyway, still lots to do. Next slide, please, Thomas. So what have we done since the last show and tell? I think the next slide introduces Joe Wicks, Adam Ellison to present from here. Over to you, Adam.
We're not going to go on a short run, but we are going to go on a journey. So this sprint is about the journey from where we were last time to a prototype. Next slide, please. So this is how we thought it would go. Planned workshops to push us to the creation of a prototype. However, this is how it went. It wasn't as straightforward, and we've learned many things along the way, and we are the better for it. And I will explain why that is as we go through. So for those who joined last show and tell, I was talking a lot about finding gold, terrible analogies like I like to throw into my presentations, but essentially the areas that hold benefit for NRW, we are specifically looking at waste exemptions here, so the problems and challenges for NRW within that space, but also the assumed user needs and user needs that we have discovered in Discovery, such as YouTube website, content, etc., where those overlap, basically. And that is the goal that we were looking for, to give us the focus for our sprint to start looking at creating solutions for these problems. So where we landed was this here. So farmers do not select the individual exemptions they need when renewing, but select them all. This is a problem because farmers are more likely to select all without reading the conditions. So lots of conversations around different problems, and that we saw this is the route to begin focusing our attention. Not the only problem in that space, but one that the team saw as important. So we did a kind of quadrant sorting exercise. Top was the most important things for NRW to solve, the bottom was the least, and then left to right was the user. So we eventually created a list of problems to focus on to get going and start making something and putting it in front of users. Yes, next slide, please. So jumped off of using that problem or that sort of problem space into design workshops, using the question, what if NRW did something that meant farmers selected the specific exemptions they needed? So we started with that part. The workshops we did, we defined the brief, we looked at the limitations, the questions that we needed to the parts of this question, the benefits that we could see, the challenges that we could see. We looked at the Wild Ideas workshop, where people got to draw down ideas and explain all the ideas that they could think of, from the reasonable to the not so reasonable, and just kind of getting them out there on paper so that we can have something to react to. I chose this one. I hope Sam doesn't mind. I really liked her drawing of the farmer, and also the content designer who drew a gibberish conversation is always a nice thing to see. But as we did that, we were also doing some work alongside that, talking to internal users, people at NRW who are part of different processes that are relevant to what we're looking at. In particular, we were looking into the pre-application service. So this is a service, from my understanding, predominantly focused on people who want to apply for a permit, and it gives them the guidance of how to go about doing that, where's the right forms, what's the right things to fill in, and they get a certain amount of free advice. At the moment it's 2 hours, and that's either email and I think predominantly email, but also maybe phone. But there's a lot of questions about what this service is, how it works, but for us, what we were interested in is how our users who end up actually requiring an exemption going through this, are they using a service and then finding out they need an exemptions? Who is doing that sort of part of the process? Who's guiding them, telling them actually no, you need an exemption, and what advice do they receive? A secret hope of mine was that we would find a beautiful process that I could just make into a digital experience and pretend it was mine. Unfortunately, we haven't found that yet. We are drawing it out. So this diagram here on the right is a mess. I've just chucked it in there to show it's a work in progress. But as we get a better understanding of that service and how people who end up with exemptions get filtered out of that process, I'll play that back to you all so you can see that in more detail. Just to say, we are also looking at pre-application service routes as well, so routes through Customer Hub. So it's a Customer Hub, permitting, receipt advice, and Lou Peel, who is on the digital tracking side of stuff. She also lent some of her expertise into this. And next, we're hoping to talk to area teams and understand how area teams handle these requests from users. One thing that we found interesting, I think, worth mentioning, is that one area of the organisation had heard that Customer Hub have a computer-generated decision-making process. And when we spoke to Customer Hub, that didn't work. Unfortunately, no secret robots were discovered. But yeah, next slide. We also spoke with Marvin, very kindly taking us through the portal for registering waste exemptions, being a great help there, showing us the actual forms and the processes. This is what we would consider out of scope for us, because we're interested in that content journey up to selecting and how does a user understand what they need. But there was something really key about this that I needed to understand. One was, how do they select exemptions? What's the process in which they select it? In my brain as an interaction designer, and I'm trying to understand how that activity may require that they've understood some things beforehand, and one thing that we found I'll come on to in a minute was quite interesting in there. And the second thing was for renewal. What can they do when they renew? What are they able to do? And again, I'll share what we've learned in a second, which is actually the next slide. So what we learned from that is, yes, there's one more, sorry, Thomas, is this here. So users are unable to register some exemptions for agricultural use. So gov.uk, or sorry, the Environmental Agency, on their forms, you're allowed to select the exemption. It's a checkbox exercise, lots of checkbox with all the exemptions, and you tick, 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 and afterwards you're asked, is this farming related, or probably worded better than that. For NRW, it's done a bit differently. There's like a type ahead or drop down, you select that exemption, and then it populates it into a table where it has a checkbox for agricultural and a checkbox for non-agricultural. So if you're using it for both, you can tick both. If you're using just one, you can tick one. However, there are some exemptions that do not give you the option to tick agricultural. Now that's interesting for us because we're thinking farmers select all. So do they select the ones that are being kind of nudged to them in a way that this isn't agricultural use? That's something for us to explore. The other thing is that around 70% of users are registering and renewing online. However, there isn't a digital way for them to add and remove exemptions when they renew. So this screenshot here shows that their exemptions, that this is a real live example. That's the list of the exemptions that have been registered, and there's no way to actually change that. All you do is you fill in your contact details, your name and your email address, you click a declaration box, you press submit. So there's nothing there that's actually, at the moment, challenging the user to consider what exemptions to renew. There is, I believe, a phone-based way of doing it. So next slide, sorry. One of the key things as well is that we found it hard to find a benefit or user need for farmers to change this behavior. So if they are registering all or a lot of exemptions, as a team, I think we collectively started to realize it was quite hard to look at this changing behavior as something that would be of benefit to them, or that could be done in a way that is slick, smooth, so easy that they love it. But that's our assumptions. So I think that really leads on to the next point, which is that we need to start to pull apart our core assumption. So sorry, Thomas, the next slide. I didn't update this one, left in the first part. But yeah, we're going to start challenging this. When we say all exemption, what do we mean by that? What's the data showing us? Are they doing this, and why are they doing this? This is the most interesting thing. We have internal knowledge that is about historical behaviour when they first got brought into the waste system, but why are they still doing it now? We don't fully understand that. So that leads us on to where we are in our journey towards our prototype. Sorry, Thomas, last slide for me. Surprisingly, as a group of user-centered people, our next focus is to talk to the user, to farmers. We have a potential first prototype, looking back at the fact that it doesn't exist, the ability to add and remove exemptions. Maybe the first thing we do is give them that ability in an easy, to demonstrate prototype and ask them, is that useful? What would you use that for? That could be a way to instigate that. And then from that conversation, we can quite quickly see how, well, our assumption at the moment is that leads on to a content challenge. If I was to add and remove an exemption, how do I know which ones to select? And that's where we start to look at the content journey. But before we jump into that, we need to talk to farmers and understand the current situation that they're in, their current behaviour, and that will set us up for that next step. Yeah, that's me. Handing over to Graham.
Thanks very much, Adam. Yes, user research. A quick update on some of the things we learned and some of the things we're trying to do during this last sprint. You could go to the next slide, please. We shared some of the perspectives we had from internal interviews last time. This sprint has put us into contact with many more people who have experience with farmers in the field, rather than, say, people who set policy or kind of organise things at the NRW end, the subject matter experts. And so these are just a few points again of the things that are falling out that will end up working into the full set of analysis at the end. But just to give a flavour and a kind of update into what we're hearing, I thought I'd start with criminal activity, keep everyone awake. We know that there's non-compliance and waste crime, but several people we spoke to also filled us in on the kind of, like everywhere else, the countryside has people who are into other types of crime and perhaps more serious along the spectrum. And these are people who kind of visit farms and go around and check how things are, firearms, drugs, other illegal activities. And it's part of the landscape in small communities where everybody knows each other, and it's part of perhaps a certain sort of omerta or silence that exists between country neighbours who perhaps don't tell much about each other's activities unless they get mad with each other. That's sort of a new thing we learned that helps contextualize some of these things. Relationship management. Most field activity sort of only happens because of regulatory duties. It's not really always a part of what exemptions is, because there's no enforcement, because it's a low risk category, but people do end up being drawn into conversations around it when they go and talk to farmers about permits and various other aspects of campaigns or everyday kind of visits from NRW. And the overall impression about how to make that work is that you can't really keep telling people that you can't really keep fining and punishing people who aren't complying only. Somebody said it, you tend to get much further by advising and cooperating, while they know you're also carrying a big stick. So there's that kind of, a big theme has been this balance between, regulation versus advice and contextualizing and help and support, and where that falls and, where confusion might arise. So we're discovering more of that picture as well. Ad hoc reactions, people go in to farms, they don't know what they're going to find. They might have to translate something into another language quickly, usually into Welsh. They might have to show somebody something there on their phone. They might have to go and get paper because it's the only way to achieve an end that they have or to help somebody. And so there's a lot of, it's not just a visit where somebody judges everything. There's usually a series of interactions that take place there that will be interesting to dig a little bit further into, particularly obviously around exemptions. We know that there are standard farming exemptions. This is something that the organisations have recognised at different points in the past as well, even as those exemptions have changed form and name over the years. And we did start out thinking that lots and lots of people, lots and lots of farmers ticked absolutely every exemption. But now we know that there's kind of just over-registration, but in a much smaller field. And we heard that it's physically impossible to need all exemptions on the same plot of land. But mostly there are a core of 8 to 10. And when you go outside that, it's either because people have over-registered or their business is starting to diversify out of farming and they're becoming a different kind of business. The next slide, please, Thomas. Legal certainty. This is the big issue that people have been telling us about, that was sort of given some interesting examples in this round of research, where there have been attempts to contextualize just the agricultural use of exemptions, even though they apply across every type of business who is producing any kind of waste. And some of it hasn't gone well in the past because it's given rise to potential confusion around what amounts and types of waste can be used in which particular ways. So we heard stories of, as soon as some kind of disputable aspect to guidance arises, there are legal experts quite keen to make that a big part of their practice. There are support systems from the unions or other farmer support systems who can help farmers get that help. So even where there has been perhaps a fairly sort of certain-ish breach of the law, unless there's the sort of cast iron series of guidance notes that only exists, then there may be risks around enforcement, which has kind of reputational and other risks associated with it. And also, I suppose the fact that there's also an inability to keep policing and keep changing, or it makes it much harder. You have to be there. This came across very clearly for people who do visit farms, to see whether you're. It's two brothers running a sheep farm. They're 70. They wake up in the morning, go to the dining table, go out to their jobs in the field, come back, go to bed, and they can do that for months and months on end without seeing people. This is, in extreme circumstances. Whereas somebody farming dairy sees the milk people every day, goes to market, has many different interactions with the kind of locality, and just, or turning up, people can immediately get a feel for how well maintained any of the infrastructure is, because if there's something not looked after, it may be either because of the cost or because of the inclination of the farmer or the way they're running the business. People can instantly tell what kind of nick the important bits of waste containing and waste limiting infrastructure is in. And there's no way of doing that over a phone or a website. Yet, as we said, exemptions don't on their own warrant visits, because there's no actual visiting enforcement. We heard lots about regional farming models, grass-based dairy stuff in the west, mid Wales, high ground sheep farming, arable over into the kind of the border areas, and all the different mixes and localities that exist, that set an important context for users, because the conditions in which they work are very different and sometimes difficult. And the last one we've put here, I mean, these weren't by no means the only things we kind of uncovered, but this has to end sadly somewhere. Lobby influence. The farming lobby in Wales is influential. We heard, and there are some organisations which are used to being able to bring it to bear on, the political situation and policy, like the unions and other sort of aspects of farming support groups. But several people offered the opinion that they don't always pick the right battles. Sometimes it's just square against progress because it costs, or sometimes it's because of kind of more local pieces of influence. Whereas obviously some bits of lobbying very much give feedback from the farming community and are very valid, and help that kind of cooperation in terms of directing farmers around the legislation and the things they have to comply with. I think that's our summary there, Thomas. Hope that wasn't too long. In the meantime, we've been setting up a number of different recruitment avenues, and people have wanted to talk to us about what sort of people we want to recruit. We've been doing exercises and workshops around how farmers might be segmented as a user type or a user group, and how to sort of bring these vividly to users sort of as we progress through the project. The next slide will zoom in on this particular workshop we did to a part of it, if we can, Thomas. Wonderful. Yes, we developed a series of sort of attitudinal personas. People who might say that we might sum up people's approach to registration of exemptions in a particular way. The FAL people are this accreditation organisation for livestock in Wales. They're coming next Monday, and I need to get regulated as quickly as possible. Some people saying, just tick everything, it doesn't really matter. And other people saying, I'll just do something. I'll just do some registrations and it will keep them off my back. These were sort of personas around which we loaded on what their digital skills might be, their age or generation, where they get their information from, where they get their help from, how NRW would like to alter their behaviour if they would, whether they interact with other parts of NRW compliance, such as permits, and so on. So we fleshed out how these attitudes could start to sum up who the farmers were, so we knew who to talk to and what to ask them, or have a better chance of asking that, and also some guesses, and some of them some informed guesses around where the bulk of these users numerically it might be as well. So you know, there might be something very interesting in an edge case, but there might also be something we've definitely got to cover in something that's much more mainstream. And so we've used that to sort of move us on. But it's certainly not the first time NRW as an organisation has tried to pull together the range of people they deal with. And I think Geraint's going to take us through a previous model.
Yeah, thanks, Graham. So I'm just going to talk briefly about this interesting little diagram that's on the slides there. So this is something we use as regulators. Unofficially, it's probably fair to say it isn't any kind of official status in NRW, but it's something we use to understand those that we deal with. You can see on the bottom there, it says it's taken from SEPA's compliance and engagement spectrum. SEPA is the Scottish equivalent of NRW. So they pull this together as part of their work on understanding the people they regulate and how those people comply with the legal requirements. It's published on their website. It's all available to look at if you ever want to see it. But we find it really useful to understand how the level of compliance affects what our actions and our attitude should be towards those that we regulate, and how they comply with the law, essentially. So compliance basically means how closely they align with what the legal requirements are. A bit of a tangent, actually. We say it's just the way those we regulate or the regulated. Doesn't seem to be a word for people that are regulated. And if you can think of one, I'd be grateful. Actually, we tend to say operators, but I think it's a bit clumsy, and it doesn't seem to be a good word out there. Users and customers and clients, they don't really fit. So I don't know whether that's a significant problem or not. But if you can think of something, let me know. But this has been quite helpful over the years, and you can see 6 different boxes. As you go up towards the top of the diagram, the level of compliance increases. So that means they are more compliant with the law. They've been put into 6 different kind of categories, if you like. They're not arbitrary. They're based on attitude as well as performance. So it's quite helpful in us using to tailor the kind of approach that we need when we're dealing with them. So, for instance, someone who's a champion is already aware of what they need to do and probably goes beyond that. Compliant is someone who meets the requirements, so we have to have minimal kind of interaction with them. Confused is a kind of person or an organization that needs a little bit of steering. Perhaps they don't understand the guidance. Perhaps our guidance isn't good enough. Perhaps we're not getting messages to them. So that we need then to improve how that happens. Careless, again, someone who takes a little bit of less care in what they're doing. So we need to use a few more levers. And as you go further down, we need to start using leverage a little bit more robustly until you get to criminals, who are people who don't listen and have enforcement tends to be the only response that we can do. So we use that to decide how we interact with them. It's not always to do with how we share information. It might just be our approach and the amount of effort we have to put into dealing with them. And it also deals with the type of intervention that we're allowed to use or we should be using. As I say, not necessarily related to guidance, but it's a good rule of thumb in how we approach these kind of people. So it's probably fair to say it's impossible to know how many people fall into each category. And it probably changes over time, and as regulations change and market pressures change and that sort of thing. So the face of the industry might change. So it's very difficult to put percentages or numbers into these kind of boxes. But as you're dealing with some organization or a person, it can help to slot them into one of these kind of categories. I mean, what we do know is that the lower end of this scale take a kind of disproportionate amount of effort from us. and have a disproportionate impact on, you know, the environment, on communities, on legitimate, you know, industry. So we do know that those, even if the numbers are small, they can have a massive impact on us being able then to deal with the ones in the middle. So we have to be aware of that. I mean, my kind of anecdotal experience is that these are pretty sound categories, and most of the people I've dealt with over the years will fall into one of these. But I think, and what I've been discussing with Graham is whether his user research will show there's any basis to this that we need to challenge, or if there's a lot of truth to it, and what we can use, if we can expand on this about understanding motivations of the people involved. We're assigning some motivations in this to the people who are champions or careless perhaps, but whether there's a bit more we can understand, I think would be quite useful. And if we can get that out of this project, I think that'd be quite helpful to us. And I think that's about it from me there, Graham.
All right, thanks, Karen. So yeah, coming to the end of this now. I'm just going to briefly tell you about what we're going to be up to in the next sprint, or our next steps, as we've very much hit the nail on the head, on the nose. That's the term I'm looking for, with the picture on it. So this is what we're going to be looking at the next 2 weeks. We're moving our focus from internal users to external users and trying to speak to farmers. We have enlisted the help of a recruitment agency to help us source some people, and as well as going back to our internal users to, we know lots of people in NRW have contact with people who are farmers or know people who are farmers. So we hitting them up for help finding users. We're hoping to learn more about the pre-app service. We know it looks very interesting for us to help influence our thinking. So we'll be speaking to relevant people within NRW about that. Non-user research data is also going to be key to help us figure stuff out. So we'll be looking at analysing the data that we have around Custom Hub interactions. We did that in Discovery and it was quite useful. We did this in here, as well as analytics from the website. We also got sent analytics from the gov.uk guidance on exemptions by the Environment Agency. So thank you very much to the Environment Agency if you are watching, whether now or on YouTube later on. And also we'll be continuing our work around Welsh language stuff that we're doing, our Welsh language objectives workshops. Our aim is to kind of build on the improved incorporation of Welsh speaking user needs that we did in the null returns mini alpha. If you long time listeners and viewers may remember. Hopefully we'll have more to share on that in the coming couple of weeks. So yes, we also do need your help. So all of you watching and listening. So we need to speak to farmers. We need to speak to people who are going to be users of waste exemptions. We do know that they are generally more digitally excluded or not so savvy on the internet generally. So they're quite tricky to find. So we want, if anyone knows a farmer or knows anyone who knows a farmer or knows a hint of where we could find one that might be willing to speak to us, please do let us know. So you just email Sam Evans or Pete, and their emails are up on the screen there. Be very, very useful. And that is us. So we do have a vacancy for a dog picture. We've run out of our dogs on our team. So this is a Welsh Terrier that we found in the Google Images that I've drawn a little bow tie on, because why not? So if you do have a dog and you have a picture of them looking quizzical, or you can take one, please do send them along to Pete. He loves a good dog picture, as is everyone, obviously. So yeah, any questions from anybody on all of that? Could be question free. Oh.
I have a question.
Yeah.
And it's not about dogs or other pets. On the sourcing farmers, I assume that we're already using our existing networks and newsletters and the farming unions and all that sort of stuff to try and recruit via them.
Yeah, I suppose we should have said that some people have already been able to give us contacts already.
Okay.
So we are following some. We're not at the beginning of that process by any means. It's just that any more will help, I think,
All right.
and
Okay.
give us more choice.
Is this only aimed at farmers, or is it other people that need exemptions as well?
So we're starting just with farmers because we're trying to start as small as we can. We recognise that farmers are quite a large portion of exemptions. I think it's around 70% of exemptions. But we're just starting with them, and it may expand in the future. But for now, it's just farmers, people who use agricultural exemptions. Any other questions from anyone?
I don't want to hog the mic. How far away are we from, starting to either prototype or develop some content that we can test, or are you already doing some of that?
So we had been planning on doing it by now, but from Adam's what Adam showed, we started to find out that we didn't quite know enough yet to start the prototyping. So we're hoping to start that maybe by the end of, we'll certainly be doing workshops towards the end of the coming sprint. And we should definitely be starting it by next sprint, provided that we've spoken to some users to kind of back up our assumptions, make sure that we're not going totally the wrong way with these things. So the key thing, the next step for us is make sure we speak to some users, and then we can start the prototype. And we should as well have, we'll likely use some sort of prototype as stimulus for them in the user research. That prototype might be the existing journey or a slight tweak to the existing journey to say, okay, what if it was like this or slightly different? But that'll be used to kind of jog their memory or make them say things.
Great, thanks, Thomas.
Just to add to that, Catherine, though, but ideally the workshop that we were on today, and that will continue, obviously we're close now on both sides of that, so the output from those work groups are going to heavily influence where we are as well. So the two worlds will collide quite nicely.
Yeah, no, that was really good to have your involvement today. Thanks, guys.
That's all right.
I'm sorry, just to add on top of that as well, we've got a lot of rich information and ideas in that space, reviewing content that exists and the conversations we're having with internal users really started to highlight how we could make things better. It's just having that discipline of holding back and realizing actually anything that we do a step into the future, it needs to be on stronger foundations, and our assumptions need to be tested a bit more vigorously before we kind of choose a direction to go in. But yeah, we have a lot of good ideas coming from the team and elsewhere.
Anything else, Renan? Okay, sounds like that's it. On the point about accepting other pets, we did have that discussion, and we're very much a pro-dog team, and we made the decision that it will just be dogs.
You disappoint me right at the end.
Yeah. I wasn't part of that meeting, Thomas, but we can talk offline.
I made an executive decision.
Okay. We may amend that.
Yeah.
Thanks all for joining today. See you again in 2 weeks. I hope the weather improves for you, Rob. And yeah, see you soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.